Hey guys, Coax here. Today I want to talk to you about one of the most controversial changes in World of Warcraft history, the new one-button rotation feature that Blizzard is experimenting with currently. This feature could completely change how we approach gameplay, accessibility, and class design going forward. So let's break it down. Let's go over what it is, why it exists, who it's for, and most importantly, how it could actually impact the game, both in a good way and a bad way. First off, let's actually define what it actually is. The one button rotation just came out this patch. It is a new feature Blizzard is testing where every DPS and tank spec can press a single button to automate their entire combat rotation. Instead of pressing 5, 6, or even 10 different abilities in a specific order, you can now just basically mash one button and the game handles your optimal rotation for you based off of whatever the game developers are updating the optimal rotation to be at the time of the patch. If you play with mouse overs as well, or in-game mouse over feature, this will allow for a very chill method to play the game, even keybinding your one button rotation to your mouse and essentially never having to use your keyboard again in certain content of the game. This isn't available for specs or in a competitive content yet, but it's being introduced primarily as an accessibility option for players who are either struggling with the complexity of the rotation or have physical limitations, right? So this is not going to be used at the highest level of gameplay is what I mean by it not being available in competitive content, but it is going to be used at a lot of content in the game. Think of it like training wheels or for learning your spec, or a way for more casual or disabled players to enjoy the game without being punished or having a top tier keybinds, muscle memory, or even reflexes. Now, a lot of people are asking why even add this to the game? And to be fair, that's a pretty good question. It's a valid question. WoW has always been a game about execution, scale, expression, and mastering your class toolkit and what you have at the time in whatever situation you're in at the time, right? But Blizzard has made it clear that this system is about inclusion. There are people who literally cannot physically play the game with full rotations, whether it being injury, age, disability, or even new players who get overwhelmed by 30, 40 different abilities on their bars, right? That can be a very, very overwhelming feeling for a player. Imagine you're trying out a new game like Final Fantasy or any sort of game, and you log in and you're just immediately blown up with 30 abilities in your face and it demoralizes you from playing the game, right? So the intent here is to give players a way in, a way to participate, a way to enjoy the game without feeling like they're constantly falling behind. There are some solid upsides here, right? There's a low barrier of entry. New players can actually try out classes without being completely lost in opener guides, weak auras, and third-party add-ons and resources. PvE friendly use cases for world content, time walking, low mythic plus, transmog farming, pet farming, mount farming, or just leveling alts. A one button rotation can reduce burnout and make casual play feel a lot smoother, right? I've been doing a ton of delves with this thing yesterday on release, and it honestly makes running this content so much more chill, so much more enjoyable, right? Because you can actually like observe the scenery, see what you're doing, see the monsters around you, see the area around you. You don't really have to focus on your rotation as much. The accessibility is there. This is a win for disabled gamers, straight up, right? If it opens the door for more players to play WoW, that's a great thing. Having more players in this game is great. No matter what skill level they're playing at, more people equals success. Learning toolkit, right? It can be actually used as a learning tool. Press one button, watch what abilities get used, then transition to a full rotation once you're more comfortable, right? Pressing these buttons in this order with this one button is going to teach you how to actually play your class for you, and eventually you can slowly start to incorporate that into your actual gameplay, right? Like you can actually be the person pressing these buttons instead of pressing one button, and you don't lose that global attack. What's it called? Because I think you get zero point 0.3 seconds added to your global when you're using this, so it technically is a DPS loss, obviously, right? Now let's talk about the real concerns here, and there are quite a few. Uh, there's a skill gap concern. If you can do about 90% of your DPS by pressing one button, what happens to the high level gameplay, right? Where's the reward for mastering your rotation, tracking cooldowns, weaving defensives, etc.? Now, this feature only presses your damaging abilities. It does not press cooldowns. It does not press mobility. It does not press utility. It does, like for Paladin, it doesn't freedom. It doesn't bop. It doesn't bubble. It doesn't lay on hands, right? It doesn't heal. It doesn't kick. It doesn't press your avenging wrath. For hunters, it doesn't turtle. It doesn't exile. It doesn't press call of the wild, right? But it plays about 90% of the game for you, right? Now, another real concern here is it's dumbing down the game. There's a fear that this could lead to WoW becoming too simplified, especially if Blizzard starts balancing around this feature specifically. If high-end specs are tuned around one button usability, we could lose the depth that's made WoW combat so rewarding over these last few decades. Another one is competitive integrity. What if someone runs this one button macro in arenas, in RBGs, in Blitz, and Solo Shuffle? Does it remove the skill expression from the game, where decision making and timing are everything, right? What if this actually could turn out better than what a majority of the game player base in PvP is doing, right? Like, if a player at, let's say for example, 12, that is hard stuck 1200 rating in Solo Shuffle Arena uses this, it will most likely make that player a better player, right? And now you go from having a person that is hard stuck 1200, which is there's nothing wrong with whatever skill level you're at or whatever rating you are at in WoW, but having a one button feature and having a person that is stuck at that MMR or CR use it, and it instantly makes that person better with just pressing one button is an issue, right? Because it is not teaching the player how to play the game. It is just telling them, hey, press this button and you will benefit from it, right? There's a slippery slope here. This could be a gateway to even more automation. If one button is accepted now and it blows up and it's a very loved feature, which I can tell you right now, this feature is amazing. It is one of the best things I have ever seen WoW do, but at the same time, it could potentially be one of the worst things WoW has ever done, right? What if this one button is accepted, right? What's next? Auto-kiting tanks, smart heals that choose the right targets. At what point are we just watching the gameplay itself, right? The WoW community is pretty split on this. Some players see it as a win. Some players see it as a win for accessibility, for casuals, especially players who just want to log in, vibe out, grind whatever they grind, and enjoy the world of Azeroth, right? Without meta pressure, without having to feel like they need to min-max everything, their DPS rotation, right? Uh, other thing, it's like others think it's really just like a nail in the coffin, right? Yet another system aimed at a lower ceiling instead of raising the floor, right? People think that Blizzard is conforming to its casual player base, right? Which they are in a way, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. You've got hardcore players worried that Blizzard would lean into the system too hard and start balancing the game around players who don't want to engage with the core gameplay loop at all, right? So here's my honest opinion on this. I think this idea has value. I think this is amazing from a casual point of view, but it has to be kept in its own lane. It has to be in its own world, right? I personally think this feature should be drastically nerfed, like as soon as possibly possible, right? It should have, I honestly think it should have literally an entire extra global added to it, right? This should not be a feature that should be used. Now this is a hot take. This might get a little bit of hate, but this should not be a feature that is used in the game in any sort of like in PvP, for example, in keys. A person running a plus 10 or a plus 15 should not be able to use this and benefit from it, right? Which is what's happening right now. People are doing 15, 16, 17 level keys and using this button and still performing at the level that is needed to time that key, right? This should be used as a feature to teach the player how to play the game, not to excel at the game with it, right? Give players the option to use the one button rotation for world content, leveling, or dungeons up to a certain difficulty, right? That's fine. Let players learn, enjoy the game, or overcome physical limitations. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with this. No one should be gatekept from having fun in this game with any sort of feature, right? But if this ever starts to creep in PvP, Mythic rating, or high-end Mythic Plus, where skill and execution actually matter, then we've got a real problem. This is dramatically going to change the game and its player base skill level. Imagine this one button rotation is viable for plus 10 keys, for plus 15 keys, right? Like I just said. You'll have players that are doing plus 5 keys and are more able to instantly jump the gap into plus 10 keys, plus 15 keys, just because of this feature. This will dramatically change the skill level gap between players in certain content of this game. While combat is one of the best in the genre, right? What makes it special is that your decisions, your execution, your timing, those things actually matter. One button rotation should never replace that. It should only support it and be used as a way to teach a new player how to play the game. All right, now let's talk about why the one button rotation falls off when it comes to top end World of Warcraft, whether that's Mythic Plus rating, 3K plus, 3.5K plus Mythic Plus keys, or even rank 1 PvP gameplay in Blitz and Solo Shuffle and Arena, right? And now this is coming from a multi-rank 1 player in all aspects of the game, right? So this is going to be my honest opinion, and it's going to be what I think of this system, right? From a min-maxer's point of view, the system just simply doesn't cut it, right? And this is why. It makes it so you lose a lot of your control, right? So a loss of control equals loss of performance. Top end gameplay is all about precise control. You don't just want to press abilities in the right order. You want to make intentional decisions based on enemy positioning, movement phases, incoming mechanics, incoming damage, buff up times, resource pooling, cooldown alignments, cooldown managements, right? This all comes into play when you're dealing with a feature like this. The one button system just takes that control away. It's reactive and scripted, but not proactive and adaptive, right? So that's the problem. You might get a 80% optimal rotation in a vacuum, but you're losing damage or survivability every time an ability is used inefficiently in a real encounter, right? So for example, you have a pull like right here where you have the boss coming up and you want to save cooldowns for the boss, but your rotation might just use your, for example, one of your biggest cooldowns on a mob that's at 10% health because it's the most optimal thing to do at the time, and now you don't have that for the boss coming up, right? You can't really pre-plan or pull resources, right? So let's say you're a Retribution Paladin prepping for a burst window. You want to pull Holy Power, maybe delay a spender for wings or trinket alignment or anything like that. Or even as a Fire Mage, you want to hold Fire Blast until Combust goes off to maximize those Pyro Blasts. With one button, you can't do that, right? The system doesn't understand contextual planning. It's just firing off whatever ability comes next in its whatever baked in Blizzard developer system script it has. That costs you DPS and it removes the ability to prepare for upcoming certain known mechanics, right? It also ignores fight mechanics and encounter specific play. Top end players don't just play the rotation, they play the encounter and what's going on at the time in the specific situation, right? And your skill level in this game determines how you play during that specific situation, right? For example, holding defensives like Darkness or AMZ for specific boss mechanics, delaying cooldowns so they don't overlap with movement phases, saving burst windows for add phases or intermissions or certain absorb phases or certain burn phases, right? Using off GCDs for snaps, CCs, kicks, or even baiting certain mechanics in certain positions. This one button system can't make these decisions. It's blind to mechanics, and that disconnect means that you're going to underperform in any encounter that demands strategic ability use, right? Now, another point here is that it creates a ceiling that's too low, right? And it prevents optimization of openers and CDs. Top players often spend hours optimizing openers to squeeze every last percent of value, right? So for example, you have some specs that can precast abilities, snapshot buffs, not so much snapshot anymore because that's not really a thing, but front load burst to kill timers, proc trinkets, or beat specific mechanics on certain bosses or trash pulls. This one button can't do that. It's stuck in its sequence. That means there's no stutter stepping for movement GCDs, there's no leveraging external buffs or group synergy optimally to buff your group, there's no weaving abilities to snapshot buffs or benefit from certain buffs during certain ability usages, right? It creates a ceiling that's too low, right? At the end of the day, min-maxing is about raising your skill ceiling, not lowering the floor. If the one-button system becomes too widely accepted, Blizzard may start tuning encounters or classes with that in mind. And that's honestly terrifying for the game. As a top end player, that is a terrifying thought to have when you're actually good at the game, right? Because the moment class design is balanced around a simplified rotation, you've drastically lowered the gap between an average player and a top player. And there's no room left for skill expression, competitive PvE, and PvP just becomes flat, right? PvP does not become fun. I think in short, the one button rotation is fine for accessibility and casual use, but they are completely unfit for top end gameplay. They remove agency, flatten the depth of the game, and kill optimization, all of which are core pillars of the high end level of World of Warcraft gameplay, right? So that's my take on this. I like it so far. I've been using it in like all the content I've been doing. I haven't done anything high end yet with it, but I am gonna actually be trying to do certain things with it to just test it out. So if you want to check out my channel, I'll have some videos up about this. I'm gonna be trying to do every single mage tower with this. I'm gonna be trying to get 1800 in blitz and solo shuffle on a few different classes that I've never played with this one button specifically, just to see how it's like. Right? So, what do you think? Is this a great accessibility feature or the beginning of WoW turning into a mobile game, right? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm honestly genuinely curious to see how the rest of you guys in the community feels about this feature. If you want more deep dive WoW discussion, PvP content, and guides, consider subscribing or catching me live on Twitch. I'll have my Twitch down in the bio below. Thanks for watching, and this is SkillX. I'll see you in the next one.